Hello, everyone, and welcome to NFL Week 14, the Fumble Sports early Tuesday window or preview. We're going to go through every game of NFL Week 14. Thank you so much for joining us. Please continue to follow us and support the new sports network that is Fumble Sports. Follow us at Sports Fumble on Twitter and at Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Appreciate all of you joining us. We have a number of speakers lined up for tonight. Our regular cast, some great analysis. Definitely give them a follow. At Spotter AJ. Adam, he does a great job. That's at Spotter AJ. He'll be up here in a second. Dennis Teravainen, that's Deris, Terava, on Twitter. And, of course, our big man, Lope. Lope, hope you're doing well. At JLopeDog, that's dog, DAWG. Appreciate all of you joining us. Of course, Bleece, thank you so much for helping me host. That's at Bleece NFT. Everybody, we're going to go through the NFL week that is. Hope you did well in NFL Week 13. For those who want fantasy football content, definitely check us out. We're putting out waiver wire videos, start, flex, sit videos, everything you need. These are crucial weeks for fantasy football owners as we get to the playoffs. So follow us at Sports Fumble on Twitter and at Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. To see how everyone's doing tonight, Adam, we'll start with you. How did your Week 13 finish up? How are you doing looking into Week 14?
Yeah, Week 13 was okay. Spreads were a little bit up and down. Obviously, Washington and Tennessee were my two favorites. They didn't come in. NFL's got to do something with this tie situation. Like the owners' meeting this year, I think they got to figure out how to play so we have winners because the ties are just brutal in the NFL. So the Washington Giants game obviously was a tie, but I actually did really well with my player props this week. I've been riding at Mahomes one. That one hasn't come in for the first time in 6 weeks, but I had Palmer, Watson, Fields, Garoppolo under passing yards, which obviously we don't want to see anyone get hurt, but that one obviously came in pretty quickly. So yeah, overall not too bad. It's actually a really good weekend for player props for myself.
Nice. I look forward to what you got for us this week. Dennis, how'd you do? Your daily fantasy lineup once again had a number of stars on it. What about your bets or your year-long fantasy?
So year-long fantasy, I ran the table. I'm in 3 leagues. I won all 3, but I'd be happy to trade all of those wins for losses if I could have helped the Jets in the end zone in the final 8 chances they had. As much as I've suffered through many prior years of painful losses, this was just another layer of callus that I need to put over my football heart. It was really just a classic, awful, tantalizing victory right there on the doorstep, and seeing it go down the way that it did, just, one more perfect anecdote in the history of painful ways to lose.
Well, there's always this Sunday in Buffalo to look forward to. So more fun ahead for you, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Speaking of AFC East teams, Lope, I know you're getting over your wounds from a loss to the 49ers with your Miami Dolphins. But apart from the team you root for, how did your NFL Week 13 go? Any player prop bets you want to call out, or any bets that you made you want to make note of?
Yes, it was tough for the Dolphins to lose to a third string rookie, but hopefully we'll get back on track this week. But yeah, maybe I looked into it, but Denver covering worked out for me. The Raiders winning on the money line and the Lions definitely cashed for me. So it was a really good week for me on my side. But one I do got to concede, you had my number. Cincinnati took care of Kansas City again, and they just seem to have their number for whatever reason. That's going to be something that I hope we get to see again in January.
Kansas City hasn't gone – I shouldn't say it this way because it'll be confusing. The Chiefs haven't gone into Cincinnati and won a game since 1984. That was a trend we called out last week. We felt good about. For whatever reason, there are certain places certain teams go. It could be the wind. It could be the conditions. It could just be, unlucky, and the trend doesn't really line up as perfectly as it sounds. But for whatever reason, the Chiefs don't play well in Cincinnati. The Chiefs have failing tiebreakers against the Bills and the Bengals now. So they're kind of in a precarious position. They might be going on the road and away from Arrowhead come January. We're going to turn our attention and our focus now to NFL Week 14. But Fumble Sports. So glad you're all joining us. We will go through the entire week ahead. The first thing I do want to call out before Adam, we will get to you in just a second, but the teams that are on a bye week, for all of those in fantasy, for all of those keeping track for gambling purposes, the teams that are on a bye week, this is the last week of the NFL season that teams have a bye week. The Bears, Colts, Commanders, Falcons, Packers, and Saints have a bye week. So those teams are out. You got to make some adjustments. Definitely look towards the content at ButtFumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at SportsFumble on Twitter to get fantasy players to pick up off the waiver wire and who to start and who to sit in this crucial week. Adam, what you got for us?
Before we move on here, real quick, let's not gloss over the fact of the incredible week that you had. You had that parlay card that you showed and released. I mean, just an amazing job by you this weekend. Obviously, you do all the hard work and put the effort in, but man, let's not gloss over the fact of what a just awesome parlay card that you had this weekend. It was incredible.
I certainly appreciate that, Adam. I wish I could take credit for it, but at this point, you don't want to get too high on the 2 home run games because the 4 strikeout games are right behind it. So you try to keep a good balance. The one thing that I try to put out advice that I learned from my personal experience in fantasy or gambling, or just as I go through my fandom of sports. And one of the things I've noticed is over my career as a gambler, I used to put a lot of money on a lot of parlays with a lot of 8, 10, 12 teams on it, because if I hit just one throughout the season, I pretty much cover my bets or cover half the season worth of bets. And that would kind of entice me. I've gotten away from that. If you check out the tweet that we put out, you'll see a lot of 3-game parlays, 4-game parlays. It's just a way of turning $20 into $45. And sometimes that's the best way to do it. You know, I put it in $10 units often, but for others, it's more money. But that said, sometimes it's better to just cash and not chase the lottery, because the lottery comes with tough odds. So appreciate the shout out, Adam. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So excited to talk about this week of NFL games. And it starts with Thursday Night Football as the 5-7 Las Vegas Raiders play the 3-9 Los Angeles Rams. This game, of course, is on Amazon Prime. Hope you guys are all subscribers to it. The Las Vegas Raiders are a 6-point favorite. The over-under set at 44 points. Some gambling trends for you before we go around to everyone and get their analysis. The Raiders are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games after a against the spread win, which they just came off of. The Rams are 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 home games. The under is 4-1 in the last 5 meetings between the two teams. The under is 7-3 in the Raiders' last 10 road games, and the under is 7-1 in the Rams' last 8 games at home versus a team with a losing road record. A lot of trends I just threw at you. Adam, can you make some sense of it for Raiders-Rams?
I'm going to stick to my guns and not pick a side in any Raiders game the rest of the year like we talked about. I've been burned by them too many times. But just a couple of things to note looking at this game. The Raiders have won 3, right? So they have to keep winning to stay in this playoff contention. They held the Chargers offense to 20 points last week, which is actually pretty impressive, but they had 5 sacks. So that was really good. I know the Chargers offensive line is not very good. And on the other side of the coin, the Rams, it's just quarterback carousel between Wolford and Perkins. It was a tough loss. They had that game won against Seattle. So that was a tough loss for them. Aaron Donald, I believe, is questionable for this game. So the one thing I look at, not betting the Raiders anymore, but the player props. My man Davante Adams has been torching everyone in this league. I think Las Vegas finally realized get him the football and good things will happen. So his over receiving receptions this week is 7.5. In the last 5 games, he's caught 10, 9, 7, 7, and 8. So I think you can look at the over in that. And his over receiving yards this week is 91.5. And he's gone over that total 4 of the last 5 games. And the reason I think that's a good play is Geno Smith last week had a big day against the Rams. Lockett had 9 catches for 128 and Metcalf had 8 for 127. So holding to my guns, not playing the game with the Raiders in it. But again, Adams player props is something I would take a look at.
Just to double down on what Adam just offered, Davante Adams has more receptions, receiving yards, and twice as many touchdowns this year on the road than he does at home. Love that play from you, Adam, to pick Davante Adams to have some great player props. And one note, I know you mentioned the quarterbacks for the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, the news of this afternoon here on Tuesday is that Baker Mayfield has been picked up off of waivers by the Los Angeles Rams. They are talking about even the possibility of him getting into this game given the injury status of their current quarterbacks. So some craziness with Sean McVay, some drama in Hollywood, just like we like it. Dennis, what are your thoughts on this game for Thursday Night Football?
For fantasy purposes, it may seem a really sketchy bet here, but I do like the Raiders' defense and special teams. They're ranked 31st in the league. However, if you look at the projections, at least in the ESPN leagues, they have they're tied for the third highest projection, and obviously that's a reflection of the quarterback situation. So whether it's Baker Mayfield or Wolford or the third string, I think that would be a solid pickup. I would be pretty confident they'd be available in your leagues. I know they are in all of mine, although you might be lining up behind somebody who has a higher waiver wire.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this Thursday night game?
I like the Devontae Adams play for sure. I think I looked at a stat. Ramsey's given up the most touchdowns when targeted for cornerbacks. The Rams have completely fallen apart. And while he's staying off the Raiders, I've been cashing on him the last few weeks. It is going to be scary. I don't necessarily like the spread -6, but the Rams are on a 6-game losing streak. They seem to be collapsing and showing no signs of life. And it won't be much of a home game because Raiders are still liked in Los Angeles. So I would say I'll take the Raiders money line for now until I know more about Josh Jacobs. And then I'm not a big fan of the Raiders defense, so I'm a little skeptical on what Dennis said, but I might lean towards the over.
Great analysis from everyone. Please give these guys a follow, and everyone in the space, definitely give a tweet. Let everyone know to join us at Sports Fumble on Twitter, at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We're streaming live right now on YouTube. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for Thursday Night Football between the Raiders and Rams is the Raiders on the money line and the under 45.5 after you buy a 1.5. I like what I've seen from them after there was that galvanizing moment where it was made clear Josh McDaniels isn't going anywhere, and it's Derek Carr and Devontae Adams that are leading that charge. That said, it's been Josh Jacobs who's really turned this team around offensively. They found a lot in their running game. I like what I'm seeing from them. And as for the Rams, they're in the worst possible spot. Their season's over. Their stars are injured, but they don't even own their first-round draft pick. So right now it's just about a lot of guys competing to put good film on out there and compete for a job next year. I'm not crazy about this game. It's part of the reason I like the under. I just don't see a lot of offense in it, except if it's coming from Devontae Adams, like Adam mentioned. So I love that player prop. That's definitely one I'm leaning towards as well. But again, the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is the Raiders on the money line and the under after you buy a 1.5. Blease, what you got for us?
I just want to say the Rams still have some fight in them. I think there was Bobby Wagner on the sideline, getting the defense fired up, and they really did put up a fight this weekend. I don't see them laying over, and I know we're staying away from the Raiders, but I just think like 6 is such a huge number. I don't see it. I still see that defense is pretty strong, so I like your play of the under, but I just feel like that's just such a disrespect for the Rams.
I would agree with you. My only reaction, though, that kind of has me thinking otherwise is that was Bobby Wagner against the Seahawks, and that was a very emotional game for him. And I think he was able to get his teammates emotionally invested in that game. Is there the same emotional trigger coming from the Las Vegas Raiders? I'm kind of suspect of that. But part of the reason I also like the Raiders and the under in this one is it is a short week. And the Rams, you come off a close loss. I think that's a bit demoralizing. And as for the Raiders, you're starting to roll. You've got some momentum. These teams going in opposite directions. And because it's a short week, not a lot you can do in practice time or in film session to kind of adjust what your momentum is. It's part of the reason I like the Raiders. But I'm not touching the spread, kind of to Blease's point. I think it's a bit of a trap right now. That said, let's shift to Sunday at 1 p.m. The first game we're going to talk about is the 5-7 Cleveland Browns, now led by Deshaun Watson, up against the 8-4 Cincinnati Bengals, who put on that impressive win against against the Kansas City Chiefs at home. This game is on CBS. Where I see it, the Bengals are a 6-point favorite, and the over/under is set at 45.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get everyone's analysis. The underdog is 6-0 against the spread in the last 6 meetings between the two teams. The Bengals are 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 home games. The Browns are 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 meetings in Cincinnati against the Bengals. The over is 6-0 in the last 6 meetings in Cincinnati between the two teams. And the under is 10-1-1 in the Bengals' last 12 versus AFC opponents. Adam, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts about this AFC North game?
Well, definitely a big game. Both teams. Cincinnati, obviously, a big win at home against Kansas City. That makes it 4 in a row for them. This number obviously opened at 4 and it got inflated to 6. So definitely some money coming in on Cincinnati here. Cincinnati's defense impressed me last week. They contained Mahomes, and they really did a great job on Kelsey. I don't think Kelsey even had a catch until the second half. So Cincinnati's defense really was impressive with that. Jamar Chase being back, 7 catches for 97 yards. We know what an impact player he can be. On the flip side of the coin, Watson kind of had a ho-hum game in Houston, 131 through the air, did throw an interception, and ran 7 times for 21. Chubb and Hunt had some pretty decent games. Chubb was 17 for 80, and Hunt was 9 for 56. And I think that's going to be the game plan here in Cincinnati. I think they're going to try to run the football, keep Burrow off the field. Watson, limit mistakes, get him some more reps. He'll get more reps now again with the first team this week. And Cleveland also is 3rd in the league in time possession. So I think that's going to be the game plan, like I mentioned, keep the ball away from Burrow. And Burrow actually is 0-4 as a starter against Cleveland. So that's kind of interesting too. But in this tough division game, I think Cincinnati had that big win last week against Kansas City. Cleveland's going to find their footing another week with Watson. So I would buy this up to 7.5, and I really like Cleveland with the points in this game. And possibly a money line play. It's at 220 right now. I wouldn't be opposed to even putting a little bit on Cleveland to win this game outright.
Love the analysis. Dennis, what are your thoughts on this game?
In DFS, I would suggest Samaje Perine. He is going to be a little more expensive. He's on DraftKings at 6,300. But if Mixon is ruled out, I think he's a no-brainer. Cleveland is 30th against the run in fantasy football points allowed. But even if Mixon is a go, we know that with him coming off the concussion, he might get limited reps. And in terms of the last 3 weeks, we know that Perine's been rocking it. He had 24.5 last week, 19.3 the week before, 30.2 the week before that. So I think he's worth the money, and especially with the matchup against Cleveland's D.
Browns have one of the worst run defenses. Great call from Dennis. Definitely check out his daily fantasy lineup that we put out every Saturday night and Sunday morning. He's had a number of hot winners the past few weeks. Dennis, you've just been killing it. Great job with that. Lope, what are your thoughts on this game?
I think Adam hit it right on the head. It seems to be the Browns have had Joe Burrow's number winning the last 5. That when they played him earlier, I know it's two completely different teams, but the Browns did have a good showing out. So I'm going to go with the Browns on the +6. I might buy it up to but I ultimately think the Bengals will win. I'm a little too scared on the money line, but if I could get it at 7 or 7.5, I think that seems to be where the Browns could cover that. And I'm also have a slight lean towards the over with the bad Browns defense and Joe Burrow starting to click. So I could see this getting up pretty high. Be interesting to see if they open the playbook a little bit more for Deshaun Watson this week, and if they were using some vanilla stuff versus the weaker Texans team.
Great takes from everyone. Appreciate you joining us in Twitter space. Please give us a follow at SportsFumble and at ButtFumbleSports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as follow all the guys that have joined us. We'll tweet out their handles as we go through the show and throughout these picks. The ButtFumble Sports pick for this game is the Bengals on the money line and the Browns to cover after you buy 1.5. I agree with you, Adam. I agree with you, Loeb. I like what I'm seeing from the Browns in terms of they've re-engaged. Talk about teams that are letting the season get away from them. You saw last week Deshaun Watson was the one who was aloof, but that defense played well. The special teams played well. I was really happy to see that, just looking kind of at the pulse of that team as a whole. And on the other side, the difference between the Cincinnati Bengals now and every time previous that Joe Burrow has played against the Browns, the Bengals offensive line, the Bengals front office invested a lot in this offensive line. They're finally playing well. You're seeing it up front. Burrow has time to operate. That's changing everything. And so I'm not as concerned this week about Myles Garrett getting to Joe Burrow as I have been in matchups past. So for that reason, I like Cincinnati on the money line. But to Adam and Lope's point, there are trends that simply tell me that Joe Burrow up against Cleveland is a much closer game than one would first expect. I think this is going to be competitive. I think Deshaun Watson will kind of get off some of the rust from last week. He looked terrible at times. I think he will play better this week. He's going to get all the reps for another full week of practice. So I think this is going to be a 3-4 point game. And for that reason, again, the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is Cincinnati on the money line and Cleveland to cover after you buy a 1.5. Appreciate all of you joining us as we go through NFL Week 14. Amazing to think we're already to the 14th week of the NFL season. Seems to go by way too fast. But here we are. And the team that is right now the best in the NFL, at least according to record, is the 11-1 Philadelphia Eagles. They have a big game against an NFC East rival, the 7-4-1 New York Giants. They have that ugly -1 at the end of their record right now because of a tie that they had with the Commanders last week. This game between the Eagles and Giants is on Fox, where I see it. The Eagles are a 6.5 point favorite, and the over-under is set at 45 points. Some gambling trends, and then we'll get to everyone's analysis. The underdog is 5-2 against the spread in the last 7 meetings between the Eagles and Giants. The Eagles are 4-0 against the spread versus a team with a winning record. The Giants are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 home games. The under is 5-2 in the last 7 meetings between the two, and the over is 6-1 in the Eagles' last 7 games overall. Adam, what are your thoughts on Eagles Giants?
Well, we always talk about these big numbers in division games, much less laying one on the road. You know, the home team catching 7 is a pretty big number in this game. You know, the Giants obviously had a tough game against Washington, ended in a tie. You know, all likelihood they had a lot of chances to win that game. They couldn't get it done. The flip side of that coin, Philadelphia just ran Tennessee out of the gym and showed that they can win either way. The week before, they showed that they can run the football down your throat, beat the Packers, and then they come back the next week against a bad Tennessee pass defense and throw the ball over them. So Philadelphia is just very dynamic. These last couple of weeks, I know they kind of sputtered a little bit there, but they look like they're starting to come back into form, and they have a lot. They can win games in a lot of ways. One thing that makes me nervous in this game is this Giants defense. They're 18th against the pass and 26th against the run. Washington last week Heineke had 275 for 2 touchdowns and a combined effort running the ball for 180 yards on the ground. So that makes me a little bit nervous. And the Giants offensive line also allowed 4 sacks on Daniel Jones. But however, Philadelphia is 1-4 against the spread this year on the road. And like we talked about, the big line in a divisional game, it makes me nervous. Everything points that Philadelphia should be able to move the football against the Giants and score, not necessarily run them out of the gym like they did Tennessee, but you know, the arrows point to Philly covering this line. But for me, again, division game, big line on the road. I just feel safer with Philadelphia in the money line, and I would buy the points down a little bit to 43.5, and I like the over.
Dennis, where should we be looking in this game for fantasy opportunities?
You know, I'll give a quick shout to Darius Slayton just because he's very inexpensive on DraftKings DFS purposes, $5,100. He's had double digits in 6 of the last 8 weeks. But a bet that I'm actually eyeballing right now would be any prop bets by team or by player involving the rushing yards. The forecast is calling for, I think, 46 degrees and rain. Philly is 5th in the league in rushing yards per game. The Giants are 6th in the league rushing yards per game. Both of the teams are prolific running teams because of their quarterbacks. And I frankly see Daniel Jones scrambling, running for his life when he's under pressure. So if I can keep an eye on the forecast and it still stays true as to where it is now, I think I'd be looking at whatever prop bets might be out there, looking at the over on that.
It's a great call from Dennis. And if you want to get ahead of the weather reports for Sunday, go to NFLweather.com. You can check out every game, including the weather for every quarter of every game. Makes it so much easier early in the week as you're trying to take advantage of some of the early lines that Vegas puts out there. You want to take advantage of it and yet get ahead of information. Hard to do that when you're 6 days away from weather, 5 days away from weather, but that's a great website for it. So NFLweather.com, highly recommend it. Lope, what are your thoughts on this game between the Eagles and the Giants?
Yes, obviously it's a huge line, but when the Eagles are 11-1, it comes with the territory. So I'm not too keen either way on the line quite yet. But one thing that I'm going to say back to Dennis's point is both teams like to run the ball. So I could see the clock being ate a lot and longer drives. So I'm actually going to side with the under. I think that's more where I'll look to play money here on this game. But as for the spread, I think I'm going to hold off for now.
I can totally understand that, Lope, and I'm having a similar concern, which is I'm having recency bias. I just saw the Eagles destroy a Tennessee Titans team that I expected to cover, and the fact that they did so in such impressive fashion has me wondering now, should I believe that the Eagles are once again going to cover this one? I'm leaning towards the Giants covering. I'm not putting money down just yet, but I'm thinking about getting Giants +8 after I buy the 1.5, because we've spoken on this show throughout the season, when you get divisional opponents getting with the underdog getting more than a touchdown, they cover around 70% of the time. It really is a great bet to make, so I'll probably do that, but I want to see if the public kind of pushes that even more in my favor. Then to Dennis's point about the weather and how Lope was even talking about this, I like the under in this game because I see both teams needing to run the football. I'm not as good a high on Slayton as Dennis is, simply because I think the secondary and pass defense of the Eagles is so good. I don't expect Daniel Jones to be able to have too many successful passes downfield, especially in the weather. So I love the idea of getting Daniel Jones on his rushing prop bet, or Jalen Hurts on his rushing prop bet, Sanders as well, maybe Saquon Barkley, given how the Eagles defense has played. I know they played better last week. But that said, I think this is going to be a game on the ground, keeps the clock rolling. For that reason, I like the under as well. As always, Butt Fumble Sports likes to try and cash our tickets. So we'll buy the 1.5 and get the under 46.5. But the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is the under, as well as Eagles on the money line. We're considering the Giants to cover, but we're not quite there yet. Appreciate all of you joining us on Twitter Spaces. Please give us a follow at Sports Fumble, and of course on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Butt Fumble Sports. Appreciate all the guys joining us to go through this slate of games. A great week ahead of us. And we move to the next one, which is, I'm a little turned around here.
Jacksonville at Titans.
Thank you so much, please. I appreciate it. It's the 4-8 Jacksonville Jaguars against the 7-5 Tennessee Titans on CBS, where I see it, the Titans are 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is set at 41.5 points. Some gambling trends for you before we get to everyone's analysis. The favorite is 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 meetings between the two teams. The Jaguars are 2-8 against the spread in the last 10 meetings between the two. The Titans are 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 games overall. The over is 5-2 in the last 7 meetings between the two teams in Tennessee, and the under is 13-3 in the Titans' last 16 home games. Adam, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, news that came out today that Tennessee fired their general manager, Robinson, which is kind of a strange thing to do here in the middle of the week. And all intents and purposes, where they are leading the division and going into the playoffs. Now, was that A.J. Brown destroying them last weekend? Is that what kind of led to that? I'm not sure. I did read some stuff about Vrabel's, and they have more control over player personnel, and he did not want A.J. Brown traded, and they did so anyway. So I don't know. With the way Tennessee's been playing, they've been covering a lot of lines, but, a really bad loss here. Now they come back home and play Jacksonville, and the firing of the general manager, what does that mean for this team, right? Now these players that are going to be due contracts or up for contracts or playing for a new contract, that type of stuff. So it might light a fire under this team a little bit of heightened sense of urgency. But having said that, Tennessee, obviously, I mentioned before, in Philadelphia, their pass defense is just really bad. They give up 380 yards and 3 touchdowns to Hurts and the Eagles. Jacksonville, on the other hand, makes me a little bit nervous with Jacksonville in this game, being that we're at Detroit. Lawrence only had 179 yards and a touchdown, and they only ran for a combined effort of 95 against, a pretty suspect Detroit defense, even though they have been playing better. Another thing of concern in this game on Tennessee's side is Henry. The last 2 games, he's only had 30 yards and 38 yards rushing, respectively. That is just not Derrick Henry type numbers. So for me, 6 of 7. With Tennessee in the money line in this game. So I don't like the 4. Even if you buy it down at 2.5, I'm not a big fan of it, but I think the safe play is probably Tennessee in the money line in this game. And with the struggles offensively and Tennessee's pass defense, I'm just a little up in the air about the line in this one, but I do like Tennessee money line at home.
I'll give my pick right now just because Adam's so right. I totally agree. I like Tennessee on the money line. I'm considering Jacksonville to cover, but I feel like Tennessee money line is the best play. Dennis, how do you see this game going?
I'll be honest, from a fantasy perspective, I don't really have much enthusiasm for anyone, especially in DFS. I will say, though, if you have any reluctance with respect to Derrick Henry, if you've got him already, I do think this will be a bounce back game for him. Jacksonville's the 21st ranked rushing defense. He's projected to have 18 points in a PPR, according to ESPN. So he only previously had less than double digits points, I think once in the prior 9 games. I think this is going to be where he gets his groove back. I think Jacksonville's on its way down, and Tennessee still has something to fight for.
Dennis, is there any consideration for Christian Kirk or Zay Jones, given how many pass yards the Tennessee Titans give up?
My only concern is, again, there's going to be a weather issue in Tennessee as well. But I also think with respect to Zay Jones, you get him on the cheap, but I don't know if he's 100% healthy. I think I can't remember what it was that he was potentially going to be out last game. So personally, I'm a little cool on both of them, but if you're stuck, and they fit what you can in terms of what you can afford, then maybe not a bad gig considering the numbers.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, as for the Titans firing their GM, I think a lot of that had to do with the A.J. Brown trade for sure. And then there's just not a whole lot of stars on the Titans. I mean, what Vrabel's doing with this roster is just incredible. Outside of Derrick Henry, there just is, on the offense or defense, there's not a whole lot of stars. But I think we're all kind of in agreement in the game. The hook kind of scares me for the Titans, although the Jaguars have failed to cover the spread in 9 of their last 10 road games. But so I think the Titans on the money line is more safe. And then I think I had it at 9 of the last 10 Titan games in their home stadium going under. You had it even further back going more. So I would definitely lean towards the under.
Moving on to a big game in the AFC East, the 7-5 New York Jets, coming off a tough loss against the Minnesota Vikings, travel to Buffalo to play the 9-3 Bills, who are now the number 1 seed in the AFC now that the Chiefs have fallen. This game is going to be on CBS. The Bills right now are a 9-point favorite. The over-under set at 44 points. Some gambling trends before we get to everyone's analysis. The Jets are 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games following an against the spread loss. The Bills are 6-2-1 against the spread in their last 9 home games. The Jets are 3-7 against the spread in their last 10 meetings against the Bills in Buffalo. The under is 5-2 in the last 7 meetings between the two teams, and the under is 8-2 in the Bills' last 10 games overall. Adam, what are your thoughts on this big game in the AFC East?
Yeah, definitely a big game. The Jets won a couple weeks back against Buffalo in New York, 20-17. Buffalo coming off that win against New England. This will be their first home game since November 13th when they played Minnesota. Remember, they had to go play in Detroit against Cleveland a few weeks back. White obviously has been playing a lot better. His last 2 games now, he started for the Jets. 684 yards through the air, although he did throw 2 interceptions in Minnesota. And Buffalo's defense the last 4 games actually been giving up some points, 30, 23, 25, and then they finally kind of got right against New England when they only gave up 10. So Buffalo's defense can be scored upon. I think the numbers are a little bit skewed if you look at them. I think their defense can be run on, and you can throw the football on them. And with White, did put up 31 points and then 22 last week against Minnesota. And they did have some red zone misses. To Dennis's point early on, they had 2 opportunities to score in the red zone that went awry. So that could have been a little bit different situation there. But they went to Minnesota, which is a tough place to play, and they hung in there. Personally, I'm looking at this line at 9.5. And I buy this up over 10. I just think this is a complete disrespect to this Jets defense. I think this Jets defense is really good. They play with a lot of swagger. And not saying Buffalo isn't a good football team, because they certainly are a good football team. But, we've been saying it for weeks, what Robert Saleh's been doing in New York. They made the move from Wilson to White. Not that White can be the long-term solution, but their offense is 100% better than what it was with Wilson. And I just think as a disrespect factor in a tight divisional game, again, double digits, even though Buffalo's at home, I love the Jets buying it up over 10.5 with this defense here.
Dennis, what's your take on this game?
Well, I appreciate Adam's sentiment in terms of watch the Jets play. The eyeball test shows you that intensity and that edge that they bring, and I love it as a fan. It makes you feel endeared to them. And offensively, they've finally shown some signs of life, notwithstanding the disaster in the fourth quarter against the Vikings. From a fantasy perspective, I'm going to stay with Wilson. He's been completely on fire with Mike the White Lotus. I think the Jets are probably going to be playing from behind. They'll be forced to throw. Wilson is White's favorite target. There were 15 targets last week, 8 targets the week before. I think you keep going with that and ride that until you see evidence otherwise.
I can see the T-shirts being printed now, Dennis. I love where your head's at.
Thanks.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this game?
I think I'm in agreement. Jets plus 9.5. It's just too many points. It's disrespect, especially division. Seeing each other a second time. I don't see the Bill. I see the Bills winning, but not blowing them out. And 8 of the Bills' last 10 games have gone under. And I think that's where it is. I think this Jets defense is for real, especially up front. They'll get after Josh Allen a little.
Love where everyone's analysis is. I feel very similarly. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is Buffalo on the money line. The Jets to cover after you buy 1.5. So I'm getting Jets plus 10.5. And the under after you buy 1.5. So that's under 45.5. I think this is going to be a physical game. I think the Jets are upset that they lost that one. That was a very winnable game in Minnesota. So they're going to be coming back. And I think for the Bills, the only advantage that they really have is the extra few days of rest coming off a Thursday night game. But other than that, I think the Jets are well prepared for this game. Sauce Gardner going up against Stephon Diggs again. We spoke last week about Gardner versus Jefferson. Another game, another great matchup to watch. Really excited to see it. As for Mike White, he didn't make as many throws as I wanted him to make this past week, but you can see, especially between the 20s, the production inside the red zone, slightly different story. He needs to be better there. I think that's part of the reason I like the under. I could see both quarterbacks putting up a lot of yards, but I think points could become tough to come by. Both of these defenses get a lot of takeaways, so I see a couple turnovers in this one, but I just see a physical defensive battle. One trend that I really liked, I mentioned earlier, the Jets are 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 games following an against the spread loss. I didn't cash on them by just half a point. So the fact that they're losers last week makes me feel good this week, how that trend is going. So another reason for me to feel good about the Jets. I think it's a great opportunity. Appreciate all of you joining us tonight as we go through the early lines for NFL Week 14. If you have a question, if you want to engage with us, if you've got picks of your own, please reach out to us, join the conversation at Sports Fumble on Twitter, at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Butt Fumble Sports is a new sports content network that's made for real sports fans. We believe every fan can be on-air talent. Adam, Dennis, Lope, you guys are living examples of it. We so appreciate you joining us and the great analysis that they are providing. So please tweet out to others, engage with us. We want you to join this great community that we're building. We move on to the next game in our Sunday 1 p.m. window, a game that isn't as intriguing as it could have been. The 8-4 Baltimore Ravens without Lamar Jackson go up against the rival 5-7 Pittsburgh Steelers. This game is going to be on CBS. Because of Lamar Jackson's injury, the Steelers are a 3-point favorite at home, and the over-under set at 37 points. Some gambling trends for you. The Ravens are 2-5 against the spread in the last 7 meetings between the two teams. The Steelers are 5-2-1 against the spread in their last 8 home games. The underdog is 19-6-3 against the spread in the last 28 meetings between the Ravens and the Steelers. I know that's a larger sample size. The under is 7-2 in the Ravens' last 9 games overall, and the under is 7-2 in the Steelers' last 9 home games. Adam, what are your thoughts on this game between the Ravens and Steelers?
Yeah, first glance in this game, obviously Lamar Jackson be out is massive, possibly 1 to 3 weeks with that strained PCL muscle. Pittsburgh's playing a lot better. They won 3 of the last 4. Now they're back at home. I think I was an impressive win in Atlanta last week. I mean, obviously Kenny Pickett's making minimal mistakes, but Atlanta does play somewhat decent at home. So I think any win that Pittsburgh can get right now, I think is just adding to their confidence. They are 7th in the league against the rush. With Baltimore, that's, with Huntley coming in now, trying to stop that and make him throw the football. But in all honesty, I just don't like this game all around. If you take a look at the arrows point to Pittsburgh. If you take a look at Baltimore's injury report this week, I mean, it is just riddled I mean, they have guys left and right that are questionable or doubtful for this game. So Baltimore's limping into this football game. At Pittsburgh -2.5, I guess I could give a slight lean on Pittsburgh on this one, but I'm just going to stay away from the line. I could see betting this up to 38 or 39, taking the points and playing the under in this one, because I think Baltimore's defense still can contain Pittsburgh to a reasonable number, around 17 points. But I think Baltimore's really going to struggle offensively. So my play on this one is going to be buying the points up to 38.5 or 39 and playing the under.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on this one?
Of all the QBs and the running backs, none of them really interest me for purposes of DFS. If there is one player I might take a look at, it would be Freiermuth. If you have a PPR league, he's actually ranked 4th overall, which might be surprising to folks. He's actually currently projected to score more points than Najee Harris. So in terms of any potential candidates, he's probably the only one that might interest me.
Love that play. Freiermuth has become a consistent target. You can't say the same about George Pickens. Last week, I had high expectations for Pickens. I believe he only had 1 catch for 2 yards. He's been complaining about his usage. We'll see if that passing game for the Steelers looks a little bit better this week. I expected them to do better against the Falcons, but now they go up against a Ravens defense that hasn't been great statistically. Lope, what are your thoughts for this game?
I really like the Steelers on the money line for sure. The spread is a little scary, but I just think that the Ravens were too Lamar Jackson heavy, and now I think switching over, and this is a Steelers defense that's gotten way better since TJ Watt's come in, so I would go there. The under 37 is definitely in play, but like Adam said, probably buy that up a little bit, but that should be good to hit. I don't see a whole lot of offense in this game.
Much like Adam and much like Lope, the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is the under 38.5 after you buy a 1.5. I agree with everybody, especially since we've seen TJ Watt come back. This Steelers defense is much better than it was for that first 4 or 5 week stretch of the early part of the season. You combine that with the fact that there's no Lamar Jackson. I don't see where the Ravens are going to get their points. One player I don't like in fantasy this week is Mark Andrews. You have to expect that the Steelers are just going to completely take him away and force the Ravens to do something else on offense. But I really like the under in this game. I do like Pittsburgh on the money line. We're seeing something that we seem to every year. Mike Tomlin find a way to get to 500. And there are times throughout the season where you go, there's no way. He'll probably end up with a losing record. But they find ways to win games over the course of the year, whether it's because of injuries on the opposing teams or whether it's because of his own coaching. But I think the Steelers are going to win this game. I am considering taking Baltimore to cover after you buy a 1.5. That's Baltimore plus 4.5. I'm considering that only because I have a lot of respect for John Harbaugh. But for a lot of reasons, I probably won't put my money down on that until later in the week when I think the public will probably make that an easier bet in my favor. But for now, the Butt Fumble Sports pick of the game is under 38.5 and Pittsburgh on the money line. Appreciate all of you joining us on Twitter Space, at Sports Fumble on Twitter, and at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. The next game that we have for you is a battle of a couple teams from the Lone Star State, as the 10-1 Houston Texans play the Dallas Cowboys, who are now, I believe, up to 10-3. I don't have my standings up in front of me right now. The Cowboys are a 17-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 45 points. This game is going to be on Fox. Some gambling trends for you. The underdog is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between the two teams, but the Texans are 1-3-1 against the spread in their last 5 road games, while the Cowboys are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 home games. The under is 5-0 in the last 5 meetings between the two, and the under is 4-0 in the Texans' last 4 games overall. Adam, I know this should be a very quick one for all of us, but what are your thoughts on Houston Texans and Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, this is just, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the biggest spread of the year across the board, 17.5. Some places even have the 18. Dallas has been full throttle since that Packer loss. They've averaged 40.7 points a game since then, and then averaging 180 yards on the ground. Obviously, they had that blowout win against Indy, but if you really watch that football game through 3 quarters, that game was tight. Might be the wrong word for it, but Dallas had a 33-point fourth quarter. So If you woke up in the morning and just saw the score, you thought, oh, Dallas just blew them out the whole game. It really wasn't the case. Dak only had 170 yards through the air, which isn't a ton, but he did have 3 touchdowns as well. But Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott took care of the rest of it. Obviously, we know Houston's poor defensively, so Dallas should have no problem moving the football here. Again, staying away from the big number here. I do think Houston can run the football on Dallas. Dallas is not very great against the run. So I would buy that over-under down about 42, and I think Houston can put 13 to 17 points on the board. Dallas can do the 27 to 30 and put this game over. So I'd buy it down to 42, 42 and a half, and I'd play the over in this game.
Dennis, any fantasy plays for you on this one?
And typically I would be all in favor of any of the Cowboys starters at any position. My concern here is they get out to such a lead that they start benching people to prevent injury by the third quarter. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. I think that this might be where you take a dart throw to one of the deep roster people. If you're low on money in your DFS, this could be maybe a Michael Gallup or Noah Brown, where they're well above their typical average. They're both pretty affordable. 4,600 for Gallup. Brown is at 3,500. So it might be something that pays off if things go as we expect.
But Fumble Sports will be putting out waiver wire watch videos in the next 24, 48 hours to help fantasy owners load up their roster for the week. Michael Gallup is one of the players that we're recommending. He's rostered in only 44% of leagues on ESPN. He's projected to get 7.1 fantasy points, though he's going up against the Texans defense that's 4th in fantasy versus wide receivers. He has been trending up the last few weeks and might be a nice play for you. Lope, what are your thoughts on this game between the Texans and the Cowboys?
Yeah, I'll make it really short. It's too big of a line. I'm just gonna stay away. There's better games, but one thing to, like you said, the last 4 of the Texans games have gone under. So maybe you hope the Cowboys get to a big lead and just start benching players, and the Texans can't move the ball all day. But other than that, it's gonna have to be player props like Micah Parsons getting a sack, interceptions, or multiple touchdowns by Cowboy players.
I agree with you, Lope. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is an easy one and an obvious one. It's Dallas on the money line. I also, much like Adam, like the under. I would buy the 1.5, raise that ceiling so I don't bump my head. But the player prop bets that I am considering, to Lope's point, Micah Parsons, again, I don't know how much he'll see the field, given they won't really need his services in the same way. So there is a bit of a question mark there. That said, one other player I do like in this one is Dalton Schultz, the tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Good opportunity to see some action for him. Think he could have a good day. We got another speaker coming through here. Todd, Billy, what are your thoughts on this game or any other games in the week? Todd, you with us?
Hello.
How you doing, Todd? What are your thoughts?
I like Cowboys a lot. Micah Parsons, to sack. I like your voice a lot. Can I just listen to what you guys have to say first?
Oh, go right ahead. We appreciate it. I'm just going to mute you and put you back on a listen, but appreciate the support. Please give us a follow at Sports Fumble on Twitter and at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Appreciate all of you joining us as we go through this week of NFL games, giving you all the bets, picks, gambling trends, analysis you need, as well as fantasy and daily fantasy plays to make. So much to give you. Please give us a follow. We put out a lot of content throughout the week. The next game and final game of the 1 p.m. window coming up on Sunday is the 10-2 Minnesota Vikings up against the 5-7 Detroit Lions. This game is on Fox. Where I see it, the Lions are a 2.5 point favorite, and the over-under is set at 53.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get everyone's analysis. The underdog is 4-0 against the spread in the last 4 meetings between the two teams. The Vikings are 5-1-1 against the spread in their last 7 games overall. The Lions are 9-2 against the spread in their last 11 home games. The over is 4-1 in the last 5 meetings between the two teams in Detroit, and the over is 4-1 in the Lions' last 5 versus NFC North opponents. Adam, this is a big game, and surprisingly, the Lions are favored. How do you think this game plays out?
Yeah, it's interesting. This line actually opened up at -1.5 Minnesota, and now it's swung all the way, like you mentioned, to 2.5 Detroit. That's a big swing. I don't know if it's America, bring it back to level the Lions here a little bit with Dan Campbell and getting these guys fired up and playing because they do, throw the ball around the yard and their defense does give up some points, or the Dan Campbell factor of, getting everyone energized and ready to go. But to me, you know, Detroit's defense is still 32nd in the league, giving up 27 points a game. I think Minnesota scoring 27 against the Jets does say something to me. It does. Their defense makes me a little bit nervous. However, I think Minnesota does have the better defense of the two, and Minnesota being 10-2 with a win can actually clinch the North. So, they'd like to get that done and get that done early. Minnesota's 4-1 on the road this year, and man, with the big line swing again, like I mentioned before with the Jets, a little bit of disrespect. I think this is a little disrespect to the Vikings. I think there's a lot of love for the Lions right now, and the public money is absolutely showing it. So I would buy this up to over 3.5, or 4, and I would definitely play the Vikings in this game.
Dennis, a lot of fantasy implications and DFS implications for this game on both sides. What are your thoughts on it?
I think there are a lot of great options on both sides of the ball. And with respect to the one person I'm keeping an eye on, it's Jared Goff for a good stream. I picked him up and started him last week accidentally. If I had realized that Fields was a go, I probably would have started him, but I went with Goff and it panned out. The defense for passing is 26th ranked. He's going to go up against a team that you saw got lit up by the Jets and the Pats in terms of yardage. And one stat which would incline me to just hop on the over, I believe that for Detroit home games, they're averaging 68 total points per game. So if I was going to be picking something on the game, it would definitely be the over. I like the potential for points scored here.
Great stat. Thank you for that, Dennis. Lope, what are your thoughts on this game? And then we will get to Christian in 1 second.
I like the over. I think both defenses are going to give up a lot of points, and both the offenses are really good. I'm not quite sure on the spread yet. It seems like I'll wait a little bit. The Vikings are trending in the right direction. If you can get it up to 3.5, I think you could take that. But the over is going to be the play for me here.
Christian, what are your thoughts on this game? Oh, and he just dropped. Appreciate everyone joining us on the Twitter space at Sports Fumble and on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Butt Fumble Sports. The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this game is Minnesota to cover after you buy the 1.5. So Minnesota +4. I'm surprised that they're being treated as underdogs. It shows that neither Vegas nor the NFL fan community really respects the record of the Minnesota Vikings. I don't quite know why. This is in a dome. This is against an opponent that they know. I feel actually a lot of reasons to feel good about the Vikings in a cover play as well as a money line play. I could see the Lions winning the game. That's the only reason I'm not taking the Vikings on the money line. But I do like them to cover, especially by 4 points. I think this is going to be a 3-point game at the max. I'm considering the over. Dennis's stat definitely makes me feel good about that, but I'm not quite putting my money down. I'm curious to know where public money is going to drive this, so I will wait until later in the week to put some money down on the total. But that said, I really like Minnesota +4. I think that is the best play of this one. Thank you all for joining us as we go through NFL Week 14. We have a number of people joining us in the Twitter space, so thank you so much. Give us a follow at Sports Fumble on Twitter and at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And definitely tweet out the space. Love to have more people join us and join the conversation, get analysis from all these different sports fans from across the country. We're going to move now to the 4 p.m. window on Sunday, and the first game we'll look at is a game between two teams in very different places. The 9-3 Kansas City Chiefs against the 3-9 Denver Broncos. This game is on CBS. Where I see it, the Chiefs are a 9-point favorite and the over-under set at 43 points. Some gambling trends for you. The Chiefs are 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 meetings against the Broncos in Denver. The road team is 12-5 against the spread in the last 17 meetings between the two teams. The Broncos are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 home games. The under is 5-2-1 in the last 8 meetings between the two, and the under is 5-0 in the Broncos' last 5 home games. Adam, what are your thoughts on Chiefs Broncos?
Well, as sure as the sun comes up tomorrow, another Denver game goes under the total. just quite remarkable how bad their offense is and how good their defense is. It's just incredible. Obviously, that's a little bit tougher to play with Kansas City coming to town. Kansas City needs to get right after that tough loss to Cincinnati. This is just another big number again. It's open at 7.5. It's now up to 9. It's a lot of points, even for a Denver offense that can't score. Kansas City's defense, to me, didn't play all that bad against Cincinnati. I think if you can wrangle Burrow and keep them in the 20s, I think that's pretty good. So, Denver's defense is going to be on the field a lot, and they have been. Their offense can't move the football. They're on the field a lot, and Kansas City just preys on that. So it's a big number again. If anything, I would buy it down to 7. I'm not sure what kind of juice you would pay on that, but really that's about all I would play in this game. But I would buy up the under to 44.5, just because the trend's been going that way, and play with the under.
Dennis, this is a tough game for fantasy owners. If you've got the Chiefs, they're going up against a really good defense. If you've got the Broncos, you own a member of the Broncos offense, which means you don't have a very good fantasy team to begin with. What are the best options to come out from this game?
Yeah, especially considering the buys, you might be forced to use somebody here. And if that's the case, on the Denver side of the ball, I'd be looking at Jerry Jeudy. He got most of the looks over Sutton, who I'm not sure if he's even going to be healthy for the game. And we're going up against 31st ranked opposing defense for passing points allowed, or for receiving points allowed, excuse me. He's at 5,400 on DraftKings. The only other person that I would be looking at is Kelsey. I think he's worth it. I know he's always expensive, but you're going to get consistently high numbers. So if you can save a little bit in the budget on DFS, he's well worth it. He's going to deliver.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this game?
I think I'm in agreement with everyone. The spread is too high, division opponent on the road, so I'll stay away from that. But these unders have just all hit for the Broncos. Their offense can't do anything. Russ looks bad. Nathaniel Hackett's not going to be able to figure it out this week, and Andy Reid's tough. So Chiefs money line and the under.
Love where your head's at, Lope. Feel the same way. The Fumble sports pick for this game is Chiefs on the money line. I am considering taking Denver to cover after I buy the 1.5. That would be Denver plus 10.5. I mentioned earlier, divisional opponents, the underdog, when they're getting over 7-point spreads, is hitting off at around 68-70% of the time. Part of the reason I think the Denver Bronco offense could keep the Denver Bronco defense could keep this game a bit more competitive than an 11-point game, which is what I would be hoping for. I think they could keep it decently tight. I could see Patrick Mahomes throwing an interception in this game. I also could see Travis Kelce getting a bounce-back game and having a touchdown, so he might be an anytime touchdown for me, parlayed with a Chiefs win. Definitely Chiefs on the money line, and like everyone else, I am considering the under 45.5 after I buy the 1.5. Appreciate everyone joining us on this game. Let me know, Billy, do you want to get in on this one? Let me know. I think he's trying to.
I would like to throw in Travis Kelce, 2 touchdown, not 1. 2 touchdown after miserable game. That's all.
I like it, dude. I like it. I love the take, especially because to your point, Travis Kelce needing a bounce-back game, and especially going up against a bad divisional opponent. I like that pick, Todd, Billy, and that would definitely cash some money. So love the take.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone joining us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at ButtFumble Sports. Definitely give us a follow, and at Sports Fumble on Twitter. We're in our Metaverse studio streaming on YouTube, so definitely go check out the video if you've missed any part of it so far, but also check out our picks. We put out a lot of content throughout the week. Waiver wire watch videos, start, flex, and sit for fantasy, daily fantasy videos and content as you're getting from Dennis, and plenty of rants. So if you want to hear my takes on not just games, but what happens after, definitely check out our content. Blease, what you got for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring attention to that graphic. Broncos are the best under team this season at 11-1, so it's pretty amazing.
And that's as much a function of their offense as their defense. They've just been terrible on both sides of the ball. In case you missed it, Denver's offense only averages 13.8 points per game, worst in the NFL. On the defensive side, they're really strong, allowing just 17 points per game, second fewest. So interesting matchup. Chiefs score the most points in the league. Broncos allow the fewest. Should be a really interesting battle of strengths. I'm also curious to know, there have been some illness going through that Chiefs locker room. Hopefully everyone's healthy for this game as we get down to important games in December. The next game we're going to talk is the 10-2 Tampa Bay. Sorry, these records are wrong because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do not have a 10-2 record, but they do have one more win last night after Tom Brady led them down the field in a magical last-second drive to win and keep them atop the NFC South. The Bucs traveled to play the San Francisco 49ers, who will be starting a backup Mr. Irrelevant turned relevant this week. But they did get some good news on Tuesday, as Jimmy Garoppolo will not need surgery and could be back by playoff time. So a very big break, pun intended there, for the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco is a 3.5-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 37 points. Some gambling trends for you before we get to everyone's analysis. The Bucs are 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games when playing on a Sunday following a Monday night. The 49ers are 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 home games. The under is 5-0 in the Bucs' last 5 road games, and the under is 6-2 in the 49ers' last 8 home games. Adam, what are your thoughts on this game between the Bucs and 49ers?
So Tampa Bay, obviously, with the comeback win last night, short week. Now they got to travel across the country to San Francisco to play the 49ers. And that was an ugly football game last night. Their defense kind of held on and held them in the game. And their offense was kind of there. Like they were one catch or one run away from getting it going. But their offense just looked stagnant last night. It was just not a good football game. Obviously, Purdy starting now. Got first week reps this week. They're going to rely heavily, I believe, on the run game. And San Francisco's defense, obviously, is what they're going to have to turn to here to get by against Miami. Their defense had 2 interceptions and 3 sacks. So I can certainly see here that still, even with Purdy at quarterback, he doesn't make any mistakes, rely on the run game. They play much better defense. Tampa short week coming across the country. I like San Francisco on the money line here. I think 4 is a little bit too much. Even if buying it down, I just think a safe play here would be San Fran with the money line. I'm not a big fan of the over-under at 37.
If you've requested to speak, just give me 1 minute. I'll make you a speaker. We will go through our regular rotation of Adam, Dennis, and Lope to make sure we get those picks in, but I would like to hear from others. Dennis, what's your take for this one?
I don't know why I'm on this tight end trend, but I'm going to keep it going here. I like Kittle this weekend, and I know that those people who are owners of him, like myself in your traditional leagues, you may be a bit frustrated. You're not seeing it. You're worried about third-string quarterback. But the Bucs are 30th in the league for points against by tight ends, and I can foresee Tampa focusing so much on McCaffrey and Debo that it turns out that Kittle becomes the third option through the reads. So I like the boom or bust. I understand it's a risk, but I'd be willing to go with the $4,300 on DraftKings to go with Kittle and potentially blow it up.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm going to take the 49ers, and even at -4, I'll take it. I mean, outside the last 5 minutes of the game, the Buccaneers couldn't be that happy with their performance. And not only are they the worst rushing offense, but they're going to go against one of the best fronts and the best rush defense. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Tom Brady. And even though the Brock Purdy, we don't know what we're going to get, I think the 49ers will be fine, and Shanahan will draw something up for him, maybe a Christian McCaffrey pass or something, but they'll score more, and I just don't know how the Bucs are going to.
Sean, what's your take on this game?
No, I really agree with what Lope was saying. I think if you look at the defenses Saints compared to the Niners defense, I think the Niners definitely have them topped, and arguably even with their third string quarterback, their offense is even topped as well over the Saints. I think it'll be a good game. But then again, seeing Brady struggle at home, barely pull it out. I don't know, but I don't know if I like betting against Brady all the time,
Hard to bet against the GOAT, especially when you see him pull off the magic that he did last week. Appreciate all of you joining us. If you want to join the conversation, make sure you just raise your hand and let me know that you want to be a speaker, and I'll absolutely let you join. We want to hear your picks and your analysis on games. But Fumble Sports is a new sports content company where we believe every fan can be on-air talent. So if you want to join the conversation, just raise your hand in the space. I'll make sure to give you the opportunity to be a speaker. Would love to hear your take on this game or others as we go through it. But Fumble Sports wants to make sure we empower the sports fan to be able to be on-air talent. So definitely give us a follow at Sports Fumble on Twitter and at Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We are going to move to the last game in the 4 p.m. window for this coming Sunday as the 4-8 Carolina Panthers travel to the Pacific Northwest to play the 7-5 Seattle Seahawks. This game is on Fox. Where I see it, the Seahawks are a 3.5-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 43 points. Some gambling trends before we go around and get everyone's analysis for the game. The Panthers are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games overall. The Panthers are also 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 meetings against the Seahawks in Seattle. The over is 6-0 in the last 6 meetings between the two teams in Seattle, and the under is 6-2 in the Panthers' last 8 games versus NFC opponents. Adam, what are your thoughts on this game?
So Carolina coming off a bye week now travels out to Seattle, who just came back and won a tough, hard-fought game against the Rams. This line opened at -6 and quickly went to 4.5, so some public money right away or sharp money coming in on Carolina. Geno Smith actually has thrown 2 or more touchdowns in the last 6 games, which is actually a pretty impressive stat. Seattle's been kind of one of those teams that was hot early, looked pretty good, and have been kind of floundering a little bit as of late. You know, with that win against Los Angeles, it stopped a 2-game slide, but this is obviously a must win for Seattle. Carolina's defense comes in this game. The last 3 games, they've only allowed 10, 13, and 15 points, which is pretty impressive. So Carolina's defense is pretty decent. Their offense obviously struggles. I think the big question for me in this game is Walker. You know, he's questionable if he plays or not. But I still think with the big line movement, I think you could buy this down to 3 or 2.5 and take Seattle. Carolina is 0-5 on the road this year, and Seattle obviously is a really tough place to play. So there's a lean to Seattle there, buying the points down. But my play would be the under in this game. I think the under would be pretty solid. And Carolina's defense is pretty good. I think Seattle can limit what Carolina can do, and I think you might see like a 17-10 type football game. So my lean would be to the under on this one, and obviously Walker with a big question mark.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on this game?
Whenever possible, I love to stack a quarterback and a receiver of the same team just for that potential for both of them to blow up together. And here with either Geno and DK or Geno and Tyler Lockett, that's a nice combo. As between DK or Tyler, though, I think I'd be leaning towards Lockett because he's a little less expensive and he's actually averaging a few more points. Last week, he had 12 targets from Geno, and obviously he had a great game, over 30 points scored. I just say stay with the hot hand. Tyler seems to be in a rhythm, and he just has the potential for an explosive play at any given time.
Lope, what are your thoughts on this one?
Panthers have lost each of their last 9 road games, so definitely Seattle on the money line. But I think that they're a young team and they can trip up, and Carolina's defense is playing well enough. So even though it got bought down a little, still I think 4.5 is still a good number. I think you're safe there, so I'll take Carolina in that. Not a big fan on the over/under yet.
Lope, I love it when we don't see a game the same way. I'm going with Seattle to cover. I'm going to buy it down and get them at 2 points. I really like the fact that they're at home, and the trend that I mentioned a moment ago, when the Panthers have had to travel to Seattle to play the Seahawks, they are 1-4 against the spread. Seattle, a tough place to play. Carolina, they're going to be in that later window for a lot of reasons. I like this game. I actually think this could be one of my favorite bets of the week. I don't see a lot coming from Seattle other than their run game. I could see Foreman or Chuba Hubbard having decent days. We've seen some struggles by that Seattle run defense of late. Foreman could have a decent day in fantasy. Chuba Hubbard is a waiver wire watch player if you need someone for your running back slot with so many bye weeks. Appreciate all of you joining us. If others want to join the conversation on this game or others, just raise your hand. Happy to bring you into the conversation. We are going to move on to the Sunday night game between the Miami Dolphins, who are 8-4, and the Los Angeles Chargers, who are in 6-6. This game is on NBC. Where I see it, Miami is a 3-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 52 points. Some gambling trends for you. The Dolphins are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 road games. The home team is 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 meetings between the Chargers and the Dolphins. The under is 12-2 in the last 14 meetings between the two teams, and the over is 4-0 in the Dolphins' last 4 road games. Adam, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think the first questions we need to answer is who's going to be playing for Miami in this game. Obviously, Tua, he's unquestionable for this game. Armstead's questionable to tackle. The other tackle, Jackson, he's finally officially on the IR. So they might get one of their tackles back. But Tua, obviously the big one, Waddle left that game. He got dinged up as well. So there's a lot of question marks for Miami. As far as the Chargers go, as I mentioned earlier, the Chargers' offensive line has just been atrocious. Gave up 5 sacks last week. And Corey Linsley is still not sure if he's going to be questionable to play or not. So I think that's definitely an advantage to Miami, who over the last 3 games is 3rd in the league, averaging 4 sacks a game. Devontae Adams absolutely torched that Chargers secondary for 179 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill is on the other side of the football, so you have that to take a look at. But until I find out more about Tua and Waddle and if Armstead's going to play, I think I'm just going to sit tight on this one for now.
Dennis, what are your thoughts on it?
I'm really excited to see this game. I'm getting like Dan Marino, Dan Fouts flashbacks here. The way I'm approaching this is totally just from a fan perspective. I say treat yourself. Do the stack if you can. Go with Herbert and Allen, or go with Tyreek and Tua. Sit back, relax, enjoy it, and definitely see if you can get in on a captain's challenge, because I think it would be a fun head-to-head where both teams seem to be capable of putting up a lot of points.
Lope, what you got for us?
I'm glad the NFL's doing this flex thing, because we're definitely getting a better Sunday night football game because of it. I love the over a lot. I think both offenses can score, and they will score a lot. From what I hear, Tua and Waddle should be fine. Armstead's probably not going to play, but I think that you definitely could see a lot of points here. The hook's going to scare me on the Dolphins, but for now, I think the over is definitely the play here.
Little concerned about the total in this one, so I'm going to stay away from it, at least for now. I want to see where the public money comes down. That said, the Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one is the Chargers to cover after you buy 1.5. I think Chargers plus 4.5 is a good play in this. I feel good about the Chargers at what is a home game, but who knows what a home game is at this point for the Chargers. But just given what I saw from that offensive line of the Miami Dolphins, as good as Tagovailoa may have been so far this year, the lack of his offensive tackles will impact him and will absolutely keep him from being able to be so successful. Adam, I know you got your hand up. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, sorry. One thing I forgot to mention was Miami did stay in California between the San Francisco and Chargers game. They did not go home, so they stayed out there in between games.
Good note from Adam. Always like to know the travel habits of teams. And a team that will be staying out the West Coast after their Monday night game, because they've got another game against the Raiders the next week, is the New England Patriots. They play on Monday Night Football. They go into that matchup 6-6 with the Arizona Cardinals, who are 4-8 so far this year. This game, of course, is on ESPN. Where I see it, the Patriots are a 2-point favorite, and the over-under is set at 44.5 points. Some gambling trends before we get analysis from everyone. The Patriots are 3-1-1 against the spread in their last 5 road games. The Cardinals are 3-9 against the spread in their last 12 home games. The Patriots are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 meetings against the Cardinals. The under is 4-1 in those last 5 meetings, and the under is 4-1 in the Patriots' last 5 games overall. Adam, what are your thoughts on this Monday Night Football matchup between the Patriots and Cardinals?
Pretty lackluster. I don't think there's much going on here between both teams. New England obviously lost to Buffalo 24-10. They've really been struggling to run the football. The last 3 games, they've only run the ball for 68 yards, which is pretty bad. But the one stat I really like in New England is they have not had a turnover in the last 3 games, and their defense is 7th overall in the league. So New England, to me, is just overall better all football team. I think there is a lot of disarray in that locker room between Kingsbury and Murray. Arizona is just atrocious at home, too. They're 1-6 at home. Their defense is ranked 31st in the league, giving up 26.8 points a game. So as much as New England can struggle to score at times, I think they have a better defense to slow Arizona down and will score just enough to get it done. So I like New England minus the 1.5, and I would buy the points up. and play the under on this one. So if you can get up to 45.5 or 46, I would lean towards the under.
Can I make the craziest of predictions? I have been trashing Matt Patricia just like every other member of New England Patriots Nation over the last week, as I've seen him just to totally destroy the progress that Mac Jones has made. But a crazy prediction, maybe I'm just going to put it out there and see if this one comes true. If Cliff Kingsbury is ultimately fired by the Arizona Cardinals, he has a relationship with Bill Belichick, who drafted Kingsbury 2 decades ago as a quarterback. Would there be any chance of Kingsbury ultimately becoming the offensive coordinator of the Patriots, given Josh McDaniels will still be with the Raiders? So that's not going to happen. Just I'm putting it out there. Crazy thought. You never know what could happen in the NFL soap opera drama that is head coaching carousel. Dennis, what are your thoughts from a DFS standpoint for Patriots at Cardinals?
I'm loving the Patriots defense. I know the last 2 weeks are ugly, playing Buffalo and Minnesota. But before those two matchups, they had 17 points against the Jets and 26 points against Indy. I think order will be restored on the defensive side of the ball for the Pats. I think that Belichick is going to Kingsbury and that Kyler's puts down the joystick before he prepares for this game. So I'm all in on the Pats defense.
Always got to get one video game reference in when we're talking Kyler Murray. Lope, what are your thoughts on this Monday Night Football game?
Well, for Cliff Kingsbury, he's also going to get a couple looks at college too, because of his relationship with Patrick Mahomes and what he helped him become. But as well, I think I'm going to go with the Patriots here. They've covered the spread in 6 of their last 7 games against teams with a losing record. And as Adam pointed out, the Cardinals are bad. I'll do them one better. 10 of their last 11 they've lost at home, if you date it back further. So they're not a very good home team, and I think the Patriots need this one more. So I'll take the Patriots and swallow the 1.5.
The Butt Fumble Sports pick for this one will be the Patriots to cover. But even as I say that, there's a little bit of hesitancy. And the only reason for that is Kyler Murray. Bill Belichick's defenses and his strategy don't do well against mobile quarterbacks. You can go back years. You can go back to recent performances against Justin Fields. This is a team that doesn't do well against versatile quarterbacks who can attack them on the run. And in the past, it's one of the reasons Josh Allen has been so successful against the Patriots in the last few years. So there is some concern for Patriots defense going up against a mobile Kyler Murray. They also have to obviously deal with DeAndre Hopkins. That said, it is Bill Belichick versus Cliff Kingsbury, and I do think the Patriots will come out of the desert with a win. That stadium doesn't have a lot of good memories for the Patriots. It is where the helmet catch happened, so always a place of dread for Patriot fans. But that said, I do think they go to the toaster in Arizona and come out with a win. So the Butt Fumble Sports pick in that game is the Patriots to cover. Appreciate all of you guys joining us as we went through just the entire NFL Week 14 slate of games. If you want to get more content from us, whether it's fantasy, football, gambling, player prop bets, game picks, rants, everything, check out our content at Sports Fumble on Twitter and at Butt Fumble Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I also want to give a shout out to the content creators and to the people who make this show what it is. Adam does such an unbelievable job with his analysis. Check him out on Twitter at SpotterAJ. That's at SpotterAJ is where you can find him on Twitter. Dennis Teravainen, who does such a brilliant job giving you amazing DFS winners and some great fantasy takes, as you heard throughout the show. Check him out on Twitter at Dennis, Terava. That's at Tennis Deraba. So make sure you check him out on Twitter. Hope I'm not getting that wrong, Dennis, and how I just said it. And then, of course, Lope giving you great game picks. I know he's got too much love for the Miami Dolphins for me, but he does a great job on his player prop bets and his game picks. That's at JLope, Dog, DAWG. Appreciate all of you joining us. And, of course, I couldn't do this without Bleece. He is the best partner to have in the business when it comes to putting on a good sports show in the metaverse and from our metaverse studio. So Bleece NFT, appreciate all you do. Thank you everyone for joining us in this unbelievable show. We will absolutely be back. Always check us out on Sunday mornings on this Twitter space at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at Sports Fumble on Twitter. We will go through every game on NFL Sunday with injury reports, weather, everything you need to know to cash some tickets. And of course, check us out on TikTok Live. That's where we're going to go right now. We're going to switch over to TikTok Live. We're at Fumble Sports on TikTok and on YouTube. We're going to answer fantasy football questions, gambling questions, engage with fans even more. So check us out over there at Sports Fumble on TikTok. Appreciate all of you joining us. Have a great week. Good luck with your bets, and we'll be talking to you soon.
May I say one thing before we go?
Sure, Todd. I'll let you do one thing.
I give you free money here. Travis Kelce, 2 touchdown, and we got Austin Eckler, 2 touchdown, both of them.
Todd
Thank
Billy, I
much.
expect you back now. Now that you're giving us good picks, I expect you to join us on other shows, Todd.
That is what they like to call free money. Thank you.
I love it. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Goodbye.